Hello everyone, welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today is Monday, so we're going to be talking about some top performers from this week. And we'll get started with the quarterback position. So we got Derek Carr, 28 out of 47, 381 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 5 yards rushing, and also 1 rushing touchdown. 37.74 points this week. And this is going to be in the 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. If you use 4-point per passing touchdown leagues, just adjust accordingly. Carr definitely had a decent week. Nice bounce back week for him. I know they were down to the Jets for a little while there. He had to throw a little bit more. If Josh Jacobs isn't playing, maybe they are more prone to throwing the ball, and that could benefit him going forward. Just keep an eye out on him if you got him. Then we got Baker Mayfield. Very nice day for him. 25 out of 33, 334 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, 5 rushing yards, 37.46 points. Very, very good game for him as well. And for Baker, he goes up against Baltimore next week. Not the best matchup in the world, but the 2 weeks after that, he plays the Giants and the Jets. They could be favorable matchups for him. So if you got him on your team, maybe you keep him around. Otherwise, just kind of look out for him going forward. Ryan Tannehill is up next, 29 out of 45, 389 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Very good day for him trying to come back against Baker. 33.56 fantasy points. And his next couple matchups are going to be against Jacksonville, Detroit, and Green Bay. So Jacksonville and Detroit, you could definitely play him in those matchups. Green Bay might be a little bit tougher, but he should have to throw the ball in that game as well. Then we got Matt Stafford leading a big comeback for the Lions. 27 out of 42, 402 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interceptions. 32.08 fantasy points. He had a great day, honestly. And his receivers really stepped up, which was kind of nice to see, especially with Kenny Galladay still being out. If he gets Galladay or DeAndre Swift back next week, it could definitely be a good game for him as well. He plays Green Bay, Tennessee, and Tampa Bay. So Green Bay might not be the best matchup, but he's definitely going to have to throw the ball in that one. And Tennessee should be a very favorable matchup for him. And then Tampa Bay, that one's probably not going to be as good, though. Then we got Aaron Rodgers, 25 out of 34, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, negative 3 yards rushing, 29.5 fantasy points. And he has a very favorable set schedule coming up. And he plays Detroit, Carolina, and Tennessee. You can definitely start him in all 3 of those games. Then some other notable performances that we did have. Taysom Hill, over 200 yards passing, about 80 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns passing. He did throw his first passing career touchdown in this game. So hats off to him for that. Should be pretty usable still going forward as long as Drew Brees does not come back. They play Philadelphia next week, so that should be a pretty decent matchup for him as well. Then they play Kansas City and Minnesota. Not the best matchups in the world, but not the worst ones either. Then we had Kirk Cousins. He had another solid day, 3 touchdowns once again. And he's going to be playing Tampa Bay, Chicago, and New Orleans. So probably not a guy I'm looking to play in those matchups since they are very tough defenses. Then Cam Newton had a nice day. I know he only threw for 69 yards, but he had a passing touchdown and I believe 2 rushing touchdowns, so pretty solid day overall. He goes against the Rams, Miami, and Buffalo. Probably not the best matchup against the Rams. Miami, a really hit-or-miss matchup. He did pretty well against them earlier this year, though. And then Buffalo should be a pretty decent matchup for him as well. Then we'll get moved over to the running back position. So first off, we got David Montgomery. 72 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4 receptions, 39 yards, 27.1 fantasy points. This is PPR scoring format. So if you don't use PPR or you use half-point PPR, just adjust accordingly. Montgomery definitely had a decent day. Those touchdowns put him over the edge. He was going up against the Lions, so it was a very good matchup. And he's going to be going against Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville. All should be favorable matchups for him going forward. Then we got Dalvin Cook, 120 yards, 6 receptions, 59 yards, 23.9 fantasy points. And honestly, he didn't do much in this game until towards the end of the game and into overtime, so that really helped him out. He has a very, very tough schedule coming up. It is Tampa Bay, Chicago, and New Orleans. Pretty much about as bad as it can get going for run defenses to face as a running back. Then we had Aaron Jones, 130 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions, 18 yards, 23.8 fantasy points. If you guys seen his long touchdown run, it was pretty spectacular. And then he goes against the same as Aaron Rodgers. So Detroit, Carolina, and Tennessee, all 3 should be very good matchups for him as well. And then we got James Robinson, 78 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 receptions for 30 yards, 22.8 fantasy points. Pretty good day for him overall. Not the greatest day, but not the worst by any means. Still finishes as a top 5 running back. So he's got a pretty safe floor, if nothing else. He goes against Tennessee, Baltimore, and Chicago. Tennessee matchup should be pretty good. Baltimore and Chicago might be a little bit tougher, but he's definitely a guy that's been getting a lot of volume. And then we got Jonathan Taylor, 91 yards, 3 receptions, 44 yards, and a touchdown. 22.5 fantasy points. And it was kind of nice to see him get a little bit more of the workload, get a little bit more involved. He was playing against my Texans, and we gave up a big run to him. And then his receiving touchdown, they just forgot to cover him. So got a couple free points there at least. He plays the Raiders, Texans, and Steelers. So the Raiders and the Texans are definitely positive matchups for him. The Steelers is a little bit tougher, obviously. So he should be pretty useful the next couple weeks. Then we have other notable performances. Adrian Peterson scored 2 touchdowns again. And DeAndre Swift, I would assume, comes back next week, so it's going to hurt his value. Ty Johnson had a nice game, actually. Frank Gore left this game with a concussion. Ty Johnson was over 100 yards rushing. Pretty good day for him. We'll have to see how he factors in moving forward. Then Alfred Morris, he got a rushing and a receiving touchdown, but he's not somebody I want to touch. Then we got Melvin Gordon. Had a pretty nice game against the Chiefs. He has a very favorable schedule going forward. He plays Carolina, Buffalo, and the Chargers, who have all been bad against the run. So he's definitely somebody to consider down the stretch. Then we got Wayne Gallman. Like I said, he had an awesome day against Seattle. They play Carolina next week, should be a good matchup. Cleveland should be a pretty good matchup. And then they play Baltimore the last week. And then last but not least, we got Cam Akers. He had 21 carries and 71 yards and a touchdown. And I think he was 22 yards receiving. A lot of people are hyping him up, so I threw him on the list. He's not somebody I like personally. He played on the most snaps out of all 3 of the running backs this week, but I think it's going to go back to being split more. Darrell Henderson did lead this game for a little bit of time. He did come back and have a nice 39-yard touchdown run, so I think it's going to be a lot more split than people are assuming. A lot of people are probably going to be going crazy over Cam Akers and waivers this week. So we'll probably mention him there if he's under that 50% threshold. Then for the wide receivers, the big one here is Corey Davis. 12 targets, 11 receptions, 182 yards, and a touchdown. Very nice day for him. 35.2 fantasy points. And honestly, Ryan Tannehill had to throw the ball a ton. A.J. Brown was a little banged up for a while. Jonnu Smith didn't play in this game. So if some of them factors happen again, could be very good for him. So they play Jacksonville, Detroit, and Green Bay. Should be a very good game for him. Important to note in this game, too, is Derrick Henry did not get going very well. So that definitely helped him out as well. Then, once again, Devontae Adams finishes wide receiver number 2 on the week. And pretty much like half the weeks this year, he's been wide receiver number 2. So he's pretty consistent there. But 12 targets, 10 receptions, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns, 34.1 fantasy points. Not too much to say about him. You're going to be starting him every week. They do have good matchups as well. Justin Jefferson, 12 targets, 9 receptions, 121 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 carry for 2 yards, 27.3 fantasy points. Very good day for him overall. He's really coming on. He's a guy that I didn't expect to be this good this early. I expected more towards next year. But he's definitely a guy you can play pretty much week in and week out at this point. And like I said with Dalvin Cook, they play Tampa Bay, Chicago, and New Orleans. And they're not the best matchups in the world. Tampa Bay's weakness is they get beat over the top. Justin Jefferson is that deep play threat, so that could favor him. Jefferson had a pretty good game against Chicago the last time. And then New Orleans, I assume Marshawn Lattimore covers Adam Thielen, so that should open Jefferson up a little bit too as well. Then Marvin Jones had a nice day. He's one of them guys you can never predict. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 116 yards, 1 touchdown, 25.6 fantasy points overall. They play the Packers next week, Tennessee, and then Tampa Bay. Packers and Tampa Bay won't be the best matchup for them. Tennessee should be all right. Then we had T.Y. Hilton, of course, killed my Texans. Because that's what T.Y. Hilton does. Like, he doesn't do anything all year, but then he still gets over 100 yards against the Texans. 11 targets, 8 receptions, 110 yards, 1 touchdown. And honestly, we couldn't cover a washed-up T.Y. Hilton. So he's a guy to kind of keep out for, see if he does anything the next couple of weeks as well. He scored a touchdown 2 straight weeks, but the rest of the year he hasn't scored at all. This was actually his first 100-yard game since Andrew Luck retired. So that's saying something. He's not a guy you can consistently count on in fantasy. But he is a name to consider. Like I said with Jonathan Taylor, they go against the Raiders, Houston, and Pittsburgh. So he definitely has a favorable schedule. Honestly, I was going over some of these matchups and saying who has good playoff runs and who has bad playoff runs on the Cheat Code Sports podcast, joining them as a guest. And I mentioned Michael Pittman as a guy I liked a lot because of that schedule. So it definitely could go over to T.Y. Hilton too as well. We'll just have to see who gets more run as it goes along. And then the other notable performances was Gunnar Olszewski, who's actually the punt return for New England. He took a punt return back. Then he got a garbage time touchdown late in the game with, I believe it was from Jared Stidham even. Kiki QT and Chad Hansen both stepped up for the Texans. They both were over 100 yards. Nice to see there. And they're two guys that I probably would consider in waivers this week, especially if Randall Cobb is not coming back. We'll just have to monitor that situation since he is on IR. Then we got Jamison Crowder and Tim Patrick. Both of them have 2 touchdowns. Both of them have pretty solid days overall. Definitely 2 names to look out for as well. Then last but not least, we got the tight end position. And boy, this one was a little bit better this week, honestly. Darren Waller had a monster week, 17 targets, 13 receptions, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 45 fantasy points. Honestly, this is insane. If you're one of those people that were unlucky enough to face Darren Waller, I feel bad for you. Myself, I faced Darren Waller in 3 leagues this week. So it wasn't very good. And actually, I faced Darren Waller and Devontae Adams against 2 different teams this week. So needless to say, those weren't very good weeks for me. The one league I still have a chance at winning in, it just kind of comes down to tonight. I'm up by about 13 points, but it still doesn't look that favorable. Yeah, Waller definitely had a great week. They play the Colts next week. Could be a tougher matchup for him. They play the Chargers and the Dolphins. They should be pretty favorable matchups for him, though. And then we got Travis Kelce. You know, obviously you're starting him every week, but he saw 13 targets, 8 receptions, 136 yards, 1 touchdown. And he had 27.6 fantasy points. Great day overall for him once again. Can't say anything bad about Travis Kelce ever, pretty much. Mike Gesicki, who was my sit of the week, he actually played well. He got 11 targets out of nowhere, so Bengals did their little trick again. Early on in this game, Gesicki wasn't doing much, so I was like, oh yeah, it's looking pretty good for me, and then he just kind of went off, so you can't win them all, but Gesicki is a very inconsistent tight end, so I wouldn't expect too much more from him this year, but if he's getting 11 targets, he's definitely worth a look, but I don't expect that too much going forward, but the 11 targets, 9 receptions, 88 yards, 1 touchdown, 23.8 fantasy points. Like I said, pretty solid day overall, but it was against the Bengals. So they play Kansas City, New England, and the Raiders. So he actually has a decent stretch run, but a lot of it comes down to that arm of Tua, if Tua is still going to be the starter. Honestly, I didn't think they should have started Tua this week, but that's a different story. Then we got UWP alum. We love him, we hate him, Dan Arnold. And he had 3 targets, 2 receptions, 61 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So he had a 59-yard touchdown and a 2-yard touchdown. 20.1 fantasy points in this game. Honestly, he played on 11 snaps in this whole game, and he scored 2 touchdowns. So he's definitely not somebody you want to pick up for fantasy because he's completely inconsistent. He's not on the field enough to matter. So this is where one of them games you just kind of tip your hat off to him and say, good job, Dan Arnold. And then we got TJ Hawkinson, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 84 yards, 15.4 fantasy points. Another nice game for him as well. He's definitely become one of them top end tight ends this year, at least in terms of consistency. Then the other notable performances that we did have were McCole Pruitt. He scored a receiving touchdown. Then he recovered a fumble in the end zone for a touchdown as well. So he got 2 touchdowns out of that. And then my other guy that I'm mentioning is Cole Kmet. He's been taking over as the tight end for the Bears. So Kmet had 7 targets in this game, 5 receptions, a touchdown, and 37 yards receiving. He played on 78% of snaps, so he's going to be a guy that we're going to be talking about a little bit more in waivers tomorrow. But definitely somebody to check out. So the Bears play the Texans, the Vikings, and the Jaguars. So decent matchups for him, honestly. So he could have a nice little stretch run to the end of the season. But with that being said, this is the top performers from the week 13. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this list. If you guys think I missed anyone at all, please let me know down in the comments. If you guys have any other questions, any other statements about anything NFL or fantasy football related, please let me know, whether it's down in the comments or if you guys need advice at all or anything like that. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. My email at coachcraigsports@gmail.com, on Twitter at coachcraigsport, or on the Coach Craig Sports Facebook page. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. It lets me know that you guys are enjoying the videos that I'm putting out. And then at the same time, if you guys are new to my channel and haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. It helps build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. And that's one for you, the viewers. And then if you are new or current subscribers yet to do so, also hit that notification bell to let you know every single time I put up a new video. Like I've been saying, put about 5 videos a week. And Monday is generally a top performer day, and Tuesday's waiver wires. Wednesday is the Thursday Night Football preview, starts and sits for that one. And then Thursday we do DFS value picks. Saturday is the starts and sits for all the other matchups. I think on Friday I'm going to throw in that video that I've been kind of working on, which talks about the position players that would be emergency quarterbacks for each team. Like I've been saying, I put a lot of research into that, and hopefully you guys all enjoy that. I think it's a video that a lot of people should find interesting, especially considering that situation with Kendall Hinton becoming the emergency quarterback for the Broncos a week ago. But with that being said, that's all I got for today's video. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Hopefully you have a great rest of your Monday, and we'll catch you next time.